It's Follow-Up Friday. We've got Tricia and Hudson wants to bring up a topic. Tricia, what do you have for us?
Okay. This is the second time that I've called.
Oh, yay.
And I'm so glad to be able to speak to this. I hate to contradict, but I've got to say that what should separate a Christian marriage from a non-Christian marriage is that we find ways to forever put the other person ahead of ourselves.
Are you referring to that Dear Annie article? Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's hit pause real quick. If you no, don't be sorry. You're doing fine. I'm just going to quick remind folks listening what that one was about. It was from Cleveland.com.
Sure.
And this woman wrote it and said, I empathize with the many women who seem unable to persuade their husbands to participate in shared responsibilities. I face the same issue, though my job came with considerably more responsibility, as well as a higher salary. No amount of discussion would change the situation. Although I love my husband dearly, I found myself feeling resentful toward him over time. So after 15 years, I hit a solution. I thought long and hard to identify which activities I could give up that would impact only him. So she did it. She stopped doing his laundry, stopped buying his favorite snacks and all that stuff. Eventually, he got the picture. They never talked about it, but he stepped it up. Okay, so you don't like the way she handled that.
No, not at all. That's a secular way to handle it. What have you done for me lately? And if you don't meet my needs, then I'm not going to meet yours. And that's a very contractual kind of a relationship. I do these things, you do that. A covenant, by contrast, is something where you find ways to lovingly serve the other person first, irrespective. Now, I'm not saying, and please, I've got to say this, because of my own mother's experience, I'm not saying that you put up with anything inappropriate, illegal, immoral, violence, anything along those lines. But if we're just talking about, I don't feel like you do as much around the house as I do, then that's where I am.
How, if it were you in her situation, where she really felt there was a dramatic imbalance in household responsibilities, how would you have addressed that in a way that you would get through to him?
I would buy the Gary Chapman Love Language book, and I would ask him if he'd be willing to read just a chapter.
Yeah.
And see what he thinks of it. And I'd explain how I feel, and then I would let it go. I wouldn't bring it up again unless he brings it up. And I would find loving ways to speak his love language as frequently as is possible, being submissive and humble and praying to good Lord Jesus that he finds a way to strengthen my Christian witness.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like what you're doing is looking at Ephesians 5 and just saying, this is how I'd have to handle it with some help. Although I would say, I mean, if the 5 love languages didn't work, why not even just try Christian counseling too, right?
Right, of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
Mm-hmm.
Professional help is always contributory. But I'm just saying, apart from that, you've got to have this humble, submissive spirit. My sweetheart and I, we've been married 31 years. And you don't get to a place of arriving because you're in a contractual relationship.
I see. Yeah.
I don't believe. Not a happy place.
Tricia, thank you so much for taking the time to call and share your thoughts on that. I'm going to have the ladies in the room kind of do a round table here and see how they feel about all that. You're welcome to stick around, or we can just say thanks for calling. Your call.
I'll happily stick around, but I'll be quiet.
Okay. Lauren.
Yeah, I think that's similar to what we talked about earlier this week when we talked about it is you have to have a conversation. And it doesn't sound like from the article that she was willing to have a conversation. She's like, I'm just going to stop doing this stuff and stuff that only affects him.
Well, she did say that no amount of discussion with my husband changed the situation.
Yeah.
Like she talked about it with him, and he just didn't do anything about it.
Yeah, then that's kind of what Tricia said. Let's talk love languages. This, if it's, you have acts of service, you should explain to him, hey, this is why this is important to me. Or, like you said, go to Christian counseling and try to get it sorted. What kind of like turned me off on the person who writing in her part was, I make more money than him and I have more hours, so...
You didn't like that part?
No.
Yeah, that rubbed me the wrong way too. Like, I make more money, so I shouldn't have to do as much around the house.
Come on,
like,
man.
if you both work, and this is on the guy too, because clearly he wasn't pulling his weight.
Yeah.
If you both work, you both do work around the house.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
Have
Yeah.
you all ever resented your spouses? Do you ever resent Jimmy for not doing enough, Daria?
I told you when we first got married, I had this image of like the perfect traditional housewife in my head because that was what was modeled for me, but I was not a housewife. I was working 50 hours a week. So I'm like, no, you don't, because you're the man and you're not supposed to do dishes or anything like that. And it blew up in our faces. And it wasn't that he wasn't willing. I had like this, because of how I was raised and just this pride thing. I'm like, no, I'm supposed to be able to do it all. And it didn't work out for us real well.
Did you just explode at one point?
I genuinely don't remember, but we're 3 years in and we're very happy and we both contribute equally to the housework. And I in no way disagree with what Tricia is saying. But I do think some men are just so stubborn, you might have to resort to an action like this lady in the letter did. Obviously, she should have. My take when we talked about this earlier was she should have said, listen, I've talked to you. Nothing else is seeming to work. So this is what I'm going to do until you can realize how much it is I'm doing and how overworked and overwhelmed I am. Although the not buying his favorite snacks is extremely petty and that takes no extra effort. Let's not do that. And then maybe we can reconvene, because unfortunately, a lot of women are married to these men that they don't want to hear reason, they don't want to go to counseling, and they don't want to examine themselves.
Now, if I were to draw Ron into this,
Yeah.
AKA throw him under the bus, is it possible that when she says no amount of discussion with my husband changed the situation could have been a series of unclear times that she sort of said that she's unhappy? As in, like, sure, it would be nice if you did the dishes sometimes, as opposed to, it really hurts my feelings that I'm doing more work than you.
Right. It's quite possible. And
You ever been there, Ron?
Sunday afternoon at 1:15, just after the kickoff, is probably not the best time to say, hey, can I talk to you about something really important? But there are times where I'm sure you could. And the ladies address, they kind of bristled at her bringing up that she makes more money. I don't think she was saying, so I shouldn't do anything. But I think it was just a fact that, you might think, well, I'm the breadwinner and I don't have to do work at home, but you're not. You only bring half the loaf, and
My new
you
favorite
should do
saying.
half of the work too.
Ron. Sarah, we went through this in some respects.
Oh, yeah.
What's your perspective on this?
I think she obviously knew her husband and knew how to get through to him, and she was creative with that, and it worked.
It would have been, do you think it would have been better to do counseling or something first?
Yeah. Yes, definitely. But sometimes, you're also, as a wife, kind of compensating for how your husband was raised. And if he wasn't raised to pull his weight and do things around the house without being asked, then you have to teach him that.
Yeah, I wonder if that ever happens.
I wonder how you know that, Sarah.
No, it was, and how would you describe our biggest transition point where it was the biggest struggle for sharing the household duties?
Well, so I stayed home for 11 years with the kids before I went back to work part-time, and we had to transition to you doing more around the house. But part of that was you didn't even know what I did when I was home.
Yeah, it was just done.
So it was like, yeah, you had no idea. And so, but there, yes, to say I make more money, like the person in the article did, like, yeah, if you're not working outside the house and not bringing any money, you kind of are more responsible for stuff around the house.
Well, you
And
kind of
so-
viewed that as part of what your
That was my
was
job.
for the
Yeah.
family.
Yeah.
It's not that I didn't do anything, but you did Dare I say most of the...
And I managed the house. So
Right.
part of that was managing you and making sure, so you did things that I asked you to do instead of initiating it because that would affect then my environment.
But it took me a while to figure out the transition, wouldn't you say?
Oh, yeah.
And how did you
transitioning.
feel like having to teach him to see things? Because you were saying he just couldn't see things.
Mm-hmm.
And were you frustrated by that? Or did you kind of understand he's just never had to do this before, so I have to teach him?
Oh, I was frustrated by it for years until we got counseling.
Yeah. Well, I mean, frustrated is probably putting it pretty lightly.
Oh, I was angry.
Yeah. And again, it's where I point out the being direct and clear. Like you have to kind of, Lauren, you understand this now, working with me. You have to be so direct and clear with me, or and even then I might not totally get it.
Yeah. Well, and also we had to learn that standards are different. We're going through this with some of our kids right now where it's like, I'm like, okay, you need to clean the kitchen. And to him, it's clean.
Or
Like
good
tidied
enough.
up or something.
It's just not my standard
Yeah.
of clean. And we're going through that with two of our teenagers where the kids share a bathroom. And so,
There's crumbs on the counter. It's not clean.
right. And so one kid, it's like, it's fine. And the other one's like, it's disgusting.
Oh,
and
yeah.
so,
Yeah, weepy. It's so disgusting.
yeah, yeah.
And you went and looked at it and thought, well, Brian would think this is just fine.
Yeah. I was like, okay. So that was an adjustment too, where when it was my job to manage the household, I could have my standards because I was the one doing it. But then I can't expect you, or especially my teenagers and kids, to keep the standards that I want.
Yeah.
And I wonder how much that was part of this situation for the wife, where perhaps her standards were different, and he was just going like, I think we're good here.
Yeah.
Perhaps he's valuing rest and quality time after work versus making sure the house looks good for guests when they're not coming over for a month.
Yeah, I had a friend, she's a stay-at-home mom, so she sees it as her job, taking care of the house, managing the house. And she went out to do something, and so her husband was home with the kids, like on a weekend, and he had cleaned the bathroom while she was gone, like without him asking. And she had to like really control herself to be like, he cleaned the bathroom without me asking or saying anything, even if he didn't clean behind the toilet like I would have,
Right.
And so she's like, just because it's not perfect or like my view of perfect doesn't mean it's not done or that he wasn't trying. It's just not my view of perfect, and I have to let that go if I want him to contribute to the house.
We struggle with that.
Oh, yeah.
Because you have an eye for, like, this is part of your gift at work even, is like you can identify problems.
Yeah.
But that's like while she was gone, when I spent the whole time cleaning the kitchen, and she's able to come in and identify exactly what I didn't do.
Yeah, that's
it's like
hard.
you come in and go, oh, you clean the kitchen. Why didn't you do that? I just about die inside.
Sure.
And
It's like demoralizing, yeah.
but that's not her intention.
Yeah.
when
No,
she
a
says
lot
it.
of times I'm just like trying to figure out what you're thinking and what you're somebody else, and that's where like my family doesn't like how I do laundry because it's not a priority to me. And now even our 11-year-old has started doing his own laundry. Everyone just does their own laundry. And I'm like,
done.
yeah, though we did have a recent issue with, because I do like the household laundry, but I don't put away laundry. Like I'll wash it, fold it. When people go downstairs to get one towel and come back up to take their shower, I'm like, take the whole stack.
Guess who never does that anymore? This guy.
We went through with our counselor.
No, but I mean, honestly, you and I view things so differently in terms of how to manage a house, what's clean, what's like, that we needed a counselor to work
Yeah.
through it. Without a counselor, we really couldn't figure out how to manage it without making each other either feel sad or angry. And the counselor really is what did it.
Or take it personal. And that was
Yes.
a big struggle for me, was like when you didn't do something or didn't do, I took it personally. And it's like, no, it's not about,
Yeah.
it's not personal.
Let's pull Tricia back in. Tricia, you still there? I want to see how you feel about all this.
I am. There's got to be a way of serving and loving without being resentful about it. I just keep going back to that story, and I agree. When you have two people that are working, it doesn't matter who's earning more. I agree about all the pragmatics of it. But the broader issue is the idea of covenant in serving and sacrificial love.
Yeah.
I think that's been lost. I really do. I'm in my mid-50s, and culture has really shifted, and that seems to be something that's been lost.
And I don't disagree with that by any means. Go ahead, Lauren.
I was just going to say, I wonder, though, where is his part of the self-sacrificing? Because if
doesn't matter. He's responsible. He's the head of the household, and he's responsible to God, more responsible than you are. I really, truly believe, apart from violence, abuse, such, that a sacrificial, covenantal, humbling, service-oriented love, without being resentful, being grateful to just have the privilege. And if you're not there, to pray to get there.
Yeah, I mean, that would be ideal. I'm not strong enough to not be resentful and need assistance with that through. So
I'm with you.
Yeah,
I'm with you. No, and I'm not saying it from a place of having arrived. Trust me. I'm just because I haven't. There are times that I get angry and resentful, but I bring it to God and I pray about it, and I feel gently reminded about a covenant and sacrificial love and how God loved us while we were still sinners. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Before we were deserving, not deserving, and even after we become saved, still not deserving. And sometimes I see my husband that way too.
Yeah, I appreciate your thoughts on this, and it sounds like you've been influenced heavily by Dr. Gary Chapman's 5 love languages, because it sounds to me like the philosophy you're portraying is that. I appreciate your thoughts on that, and for taking the time to call and listen and be part of this. We're so grateful.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. This is such an incredible resource to all of not just Northeastern Ohio, but all of the multiplicities of areas that you serve. How wonderful. I'm so grateful.
Well, thank you for those kind words, Tricia. God bless you. Thanks so much. Before we get to the break, I think it's interesting to note, and I know you have some more to share on this, as we're talking about a Dear Annie article where wife had a real hard time getting her husband to share the load of the work in the home. Our marriage counselor told us that Dr. Chapman's book is super effective for marriages that need a tune-up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But when you're dealing with more deep issues,
Sure, yeah.
like we were,
Dr. Chapman says that himself. I've been to one of his conferences.
does he say that?
Yeah.
Yeah, when you're dealing with deeper issues, that's not going to be enough.
I mean, he's a counselor. He knows.
Yeah. And we did deal with deeper issues, both of us.
It wasn't just about the laundry.
no,
It ran so much deeper.
and that's something that a counselor can help you figure out.
Yeah.
Is that it's not really about the laundry or about the dishes.
Yeah.
Well, because we were speaking different languages.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, speaking of love languages, like you would say something and I didn't understand what you meant by it, and we couldn't figure out a way to come to an understanding together.
Mm-hmm.
You need someone sometimes to moderate those things to figure it out. And if you're me and you're not doing as much as you should and you don't get it, and your wife is super stressed out because she's working so hard, so many hours, and she still has the expectation that even though you're home, she's going to come home and make dinner, and you're not getting it, I mean, I don't know how you don't build up deep resentment from that.
Because I'm not making you dinner.
Thanks to Tricia for the call, for joining us as we discuss a Dear Annie piece from Cleveland.com where a wife just couldn't figure out how to get her husband to help out around the house in a really reasonably fair way. She came up with some dramatic solutions to that. Before we continue on with this discussion, though, special thanks to Tricia again for the kind words about this ministry. As we prepare for Share, it's about 5 weeks away or so. If this ministry has impacted your life in some way, would you help us out? We need help telling the story of what this ministry has done. And you have a couple of ways you can do that. You could text us, right?
Yeah, you can text us at 440-546-2255. You can either text us your story or you can text the word story to that number, and it'll give you some instructions back where you can call a voicemail line and we'll hear your story with your voice.
So we'd be grateful for your help. Now, anytime I see Lauren lean over and grab one of her Bible resources, she's got a giant stack of Bible resources in the studio, I know something's cooking. So we were talking before the break about how Tricia's thought was, when you need a tune-up in your marriage, really, she was talking to women, you need to really kind of get into your prayer life and submit and think of serving.
Right. And so I asked, well, okay, maybe you are being self-sacrificing, but what about the husband? What if he's not being self-sacrificing? And she said it doesn't matter, to which I disagree.
Okay, tell us more.
Ephesians 5 says, Ephesians 5:21 talks about submitting to one another out of reverence for Christ. And then the next section goes into husbands and wives. We know it says, wives, submit to your husband as the Lord. For the husband is the head of the wife, even as Christ is the head of the church, his body, and is himself is his Savior. Now, as the church submits to Christ, so also wives should submit in everything to their husbands. Now, here's the part, everybody. Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her, that he might sanctify her, having cleansed her by the washing of water with the word. So, what is the most self-sacrificial thing that has ever been done? Christ dying for the church. So if a husband is supposed to love a wife as Christ has loved the church, he should be more self-sacrificing. Mm-hmm. It should be important. And it does matter that he is self-sacrificing.
I don't know if Tricia meant it doesn't matter as in like, oh, the man can just do whatever he wants and he shouldn't sacrifice for his wife. I think what she was getting at is if your husband is not being a good husband, if he's not, barring abuse, we know that. If he's not doing his part and being self-sacrificing, that shouldn't change your behavior towards him.
No, absolutely not. It doesn't give you the right to be unkind or rude. And we all have agreed that what this woman did in the article was a little dramatic. But if she had tried, but just saying you as the woman needs to be self-sacrificing, or even as the husband just self-sacrificing. No, I think there needs to be work done. You both have to be self-sacrificing. And if he's not also being self-sacrificing, then you need to go do something about it.
And knowing we went through this, because I was in many respects this guy.
Yeah.
Why weren't you able to just pray about it and be fine?
Well, if you continue as a wife, if you continue on doing everything for your husband, and he's taking advantage of that, then you're enabling him having bad habits and not being the head of the household, not being the husband he should be. So, but yeah,
we waited too long to get help to get that fixed. I would say. Yeah. But at the same time, I think there would be nothing wrong with using the community for what it's for. Church community is a place where she should be safe, whoever she is, going to the church community and saying, I need help because my husband's not fulfilling his obligations as being self-sacrificing. And there should be a church community that gathers around and helps them out.
Yeah, you should be in community deep enough for someone to call you out on that.
To call it out, to notice it, say something about it.
Yeah.
This is the kind of community I think we all long for, but what's difficult is American culture works against this in that we're individualistic and private. We don't lend ourselves well to a community-centric view of life together.
And if you do have community, you're not honest about what's actually going on.
Oh, yeah.
In your marriage.
Oh, yeah. And I remember we were part of a small group where we're trying to cultivate that, but it's hard. And there was just one little thing said by one guy that gave me a window towards connection. We were talking about parenting, and I remember, and you'll remember this. And he looked at me with tears in his eyes, and he said, "I have a lot of regrets as a dad." That's what I needed. We ended up having lunch together, and he ministered to me because I was carrying regrets, but I was afraid to talk about it. Who am I going to tell? He opened the door with his vulnerability. Now, in a robust, healthy community, when everyone's doing that, this problem is going to get solved by the community. But I don't, it wouldn't have been fair to my wife for me to just presume that, hey, I'm the head of the household, so however I'm going to live my life, you're going to have to figure out how to submit to that.
And, well,
I don't think she was saying that, but I think there's some who would indicate that's the case.
And there may be some point that you do have to do that as a wife. Like if this couple still didn't get it through his head that she's not doing stuff for him and he didn't make changes, then she would have had to say, because it's not necessarily just about not having the workload. You know, it's like it's about the fact that he's not willing to do it to help her.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing. It's not about the garbage going out or the dishes being done, but it's about, I asked you to do this and help me, and you don't love me enough to now do this. And so I think it definitely goes down to something deeper, but I mean, he learned to do those tasks.
Yeah, and I'm not sure I know a guy, if somebody was as direct as you just were. You know, you're not, I asked you for help with this, and you say you love me. And like that direct. I don't know a guy who would just sit there and say, "Tough luck, lady."
Yeah. Oh,
you do? In
the
church? I would hope not. But
I don't know if they would consciously say that, but I think they just wouldn't. It's like, she'll get over it. I don't want to do that. It's not a priority.
And I agree with you, Sarah, but where Tricia's coming from, I think it's a beautiful picture of the love and self-sacrifice that Jesus has for the church.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we, if we were in this situation, we as women were all married to wonderful people. I think.
Correct. That's true.
I would, I think the Christ part of us would need to just say, I'm going to continue doing what I do out of love, even if it's not what I quote unquote deserve, because Jesus gave us what we didn't deserve.